Okay, continuing Kuntres HaHispaalus, Perek Beis. In this Perek, the Mitteler Rebbe is going to explain the 5 levels, or really 6 levels he's going to go through here of Hispaalus of the Nefesh HaTibis. In the end, he's going to start off with level 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when he gets to the end, he's going to say that really the first level was not one of the levels that correspond to Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaim Yechida. But the first level is like a gateway to enter these levels, and that's why it seems like he begins with that. And then the end, he says, really, they correspond to Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chaim Yechida. And so the last 5 of the 6 correspond to those, and the first one is the level that's like an intermediary to help a person bridge. Okay, let's begin. V'hine, lefi hanira yesh bazeh hey madrege zu l'mayla mizu. Seemingly, or I mean, this is the case that there are 5 levels, one above the other. After understanding these 5 levels, every person will be able to recognize their proper place, where they're holding their Avodas Hashem, and they will not come to make a mistake. And I think it's important to point out, he's going to explain these 5 levels of Nefesh L'Kis, of the Nefesh HaTibis, then he's going to explain the 5 levels of Nefesh L'Kis. But at the end, he's going to say that the main thing, even though a person, on the one hand, should be striving to grow in their Avodas Hashem and go up from level to level, on the other hand, the main thing is not really what level a person's on, but that whatever level they're on, a person is plugged in and doing what's natural and sincere and true for that level. But it's helpful to know what level a person's on, because later he's going to also explain the different mistakes and pitfalls a person could have on each level. And so it could be helpful to recognize that to help a person grow. And this is a similar paradigm in anything. Imagine a person is going to learn to play an instrument or take swimming lessons or learn art or any sort of skill or thing like that. So you could divide the curriculum into different levels and say, okay, you progress from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, and this are the skills you need to learn on each level, and this is how you can go through that process. But it's also about being able to appreciate the process itself. And whatever level a person's on, they should be able to find meaning and joy in where they are. And in a way, that's more important than just being the top. It's not like it's worth nothing until you get to the top. And really, there is no top. So this is a very important idea, and it's very central, really, to what explains in Tanya about the perspective of whether I should view myself as like a tzaddik and a Rasha and a Beinoni and all these different levels. And then on the one hand, yes, we should be trying to grow and trying to strive to be a tzaddik, but on the other hand, whatever level we're on, the main thing is we have to have serve Hashem with simcha on that level. So that's kind of an important idea that's flowing through this whole sefer, as we'll see. And I think it's worth keeping in mind now. Okay, so let's begin with the first level. Ha'alef, the first level, Ha'garua Shabakulam, which is the lowest of all of these. V'hu shakol ikar cheftzai ein erak lies mispal bilvad v'yeh loy mizeh chayes. So these levels are broadly speaking different stages or levels of motivation and different levels of being inspired. And so this first level, which is the lowest of all of them, is where the person's main intention is just that they want to be inspired for its own sake, because they want to have that feeling of life and vitality, and it's really kind of self-serving. And this, relatively speaking, is the lowest of all the levels. And this level is very close to a person having the completely fake external type of excitement where it's completely self-serving. But the difference is that there, it was not coming from a godly hisbainus at all. The person was just working themselves up in a completely fake way, or using these other methods where it's not coming from godliness. Here, a person is learning something, or let's say they're going to Fabrengen, whatever it is, they're doing something, but they're doing it because they want to feel uplifted. They want to feel good. So they're doing it in a way that's self-serving, but they're doing something good and doing what they should be doing for a self-serving thing. And so that is a little different than just a person that is chasing that high and they don't care where it comes from. Here, they do want it to come from a proper place, and it is coming from a proper place. So she'ena hispilus like a cloud. So this is nearer to that feeling that we talked about before, where it's just for themselves and it's just self-serving, which is not godly at all. But this is not the same as that. So this is near to that level because he doesn't really desire the godliness. He's not looking to be close to God and be serving Hashem. And his intention and his yearning, his goal, is not that godliness should be revealed in his soul, or that he should connect his soul to godliness, and basically this like a Ratzei B'Shuv thing of expressing godliness through Torah mitzvahs, or being inspired to have Mesiras Nefesh, let's say, or things like that. He's not looking for that, any of that. He's just looking to have chayv something so he can feel. So in a way, he is looking to feed his ego, but he's looking to feel good about himself because he's doing a good thing. And so that's not so bad, right? That's like where Rambam talks about the idea that it's in the beginning you can educate a child and motivate them to learn for prizes or for these kind of extrinsic motives, and that's okay because at the end of the day they're doing the right thing. But nevertheless, there's a little bit of good mixed into this motivation of this person, behelem, in a hidden way. But who may bechinas, in other words, it's like subconscious. There's a good there. Who may bechinas ava hamisuteres. This is coming from this hidden love, which is the love of the godly soul. That's really inside the person, just like the child does have this innate curiosity and need to feed that, and that's really part of the equation. Even though the child's not mature enough to appreciate that, that's why they should want to learn, and that it doesn't make sense to the child that they should enjoy the learning, let's say. But really, they do have that part of themselves that does enjoy it because they have that nature. So in a similar way, the Jew has this natural godly soul that has this natural love for God. They want to be connected to godly things. They want to learn about do Torah mitzvahs, and they want to be connected. And so that's really what's motivating them. But consciously, they're doing it because they want to feel good about themselves, whether just in the moment feel good or that their ego should get a boost. They should be able to feel, they won the contest, they did the chidon or whatever it is, these kind of things. And this hidden love is being expressed in this garment, this lavush, which is foreign to it, and that's the conscious desire. But subconsciously, really on the inside, their desire is that their inspiration should come specifically from God, from being connected to godly things. And if it wasn't a godly thing, they wouldn't want it at all. And you see that, like I know sometimes people they'll want to come for bringing just because they want to feel uplifted. They want to whatever, or just because it's exciting, it's fun, it's entertaining, and that's kind of consciously what's driving them. But they wouldn't come to just like a Super Bowl party or something else because they're looking for it to be in a godly way. So this is this kind of level that yes, the person is consciously being motivated by something that is coming from Klippas Noiga that's kind of self-centered, but at the end of the day, they want it to be from a holy thing. Hagam shebegilei ein ha'inyan kain, even though in a revealed conscious way, that's not what's motivating them. But you see that that's really, they wouldn't be interested if it wasn't a good thing. Because they don't take to heart and think about what's really going on here, that they're serving Hashem. The real purpose is that God should be revealed in themselves. It shouldn't just be done for their own enjoyment because it's geschmack. It should be because they want to be connected to God. And so this could take many forms of Lay Lishma, but basically we tolerate and we say it's okay to have a Shalay Lishma that's Mitay Shalay Lishma, Balishma. The inside of that Lay Lishma is really Lishma. Really, they're on the inside, the Pneumius are doing it for the right reason. And the fact that they're doing it, let's say for a reward, for Ilam Haba, for Gan Eden, for a bracha, to feel good, whatever it is, any of those things that are extrinsic motivators, as long as it's not getting in the way, it's getting to the good thing, fine. On the inside, they're doing it for the right reason, they're doing the right thing, and we're okay with that. That's like the gateway, the entryway to get into doing it for the proper reasons. And this is what's described in the pasuk, that being close to God is good to me. In other words, that person feels personal pleasure and enjoyment or personal benefit from it in some way, and that's what's consciously motivating them. Okay, so that's the first level. And then the second level, which is higher than this, this is where a person here they learn an idea in godliness and they understand it, but they understand it in a way that they feel is a little bit detached from them. They don't see how it's so personally relevant or so practical that they would achieve it. They don't feel like it's achievable. So the person is studying and thinking about godliness, and he actually understands it well, until it becomes very true and very well received in their mind that the person believes in it. Shehu davar emes lamit is completely true. And you see a lot of people, they learn on a simple level with sincerity. They learn Chassidus, they learn a mimer, they learn a sikha, whatever it is. They totally believe that the Torah is true. They believe what the Rebbeim say is true. 100%, anything Chassidus, to them, it's Kodesh Kodashim is totally holy and true. Blushing Yiddish, es legt sich in Mayach sehr gut. It really sits in their mind. It makes sense to them. Yeah, it makes sense to me that it's true. But the person feels that it's distance from them. In other words, they don't feel how it's personally relevant. So, okay, I believe it's true, but how does that affect me? Or let's say you see this very often where people hear these stories about tzaddikim or great chassidim and things like that, and they feel like that'd be great. I wish I could be like them, but they don't see how it's possible for them to achieve that. So both of these kind of things, either the idea could be theoretical, they don't see how it's relevant, or the person, even if it's something that they can recognize, imagine a person doing, they can't imagine themselves doing it. They don't see a path forward to get there. V'shoyo, and they ask, so they say, okay, but what benefit is there to me? I admit that it's true and it's real, but how does this going to influence me in my life? And you have this a lot where people will, let's say, go, doesn't have to be in days of Torah. Also, you have this kind of a problem where a person goes to a presentation, they go to a lecture, that's very inspiring, it's very nice, but they walk away. They don't really, besides feeling, wow, that's amazing, they don't know what to do with it. V'hainu, mitzad sheguf inin asbeinis belakus yakar be'enav naid. And this is because the idea of wanting to study and know godliness is very precious in their eyes. They realize it's a valuable thing. And they accept it in a way of haidah, that they just take it as like on faith that yes, this is important and it's valuable, and therefore I should do it. And they feel that godliness is completely a very valuable and important thing, and they feel they put it in the highest pedestal, the highest place in their priorities of yes, godliness is a wonderful, important thing, and even in their heart they feel that way. But the person wants that they should understand it in a way that's personally relevant to them so that they can really feel it and relate to it. And it shouldn't just be this, a lot of times we learn Chassidus, it's just these words, it's these high levels, and it's very abstract and very nebulous, and people feel like, I believe it, and it's great, and obviously the Rebbeim know what they're talking about, but I don't really get what it's talking about. So they feel this disconnect. Blushing Yiddish, es is der Inyan weit sehr von him. The idea is very far from him. Es gehört nicht zu him, he doesn't relate to it. Und nicht shaykh klal zu him, he doesn't feel that it's relevant to him. Ukai gavna. Ukiyadua, as is known. V'zehu madrega yosher taiva, and this is a better level than the previous one. Shekarav lovi the bechinas HaHispaalus leika al kapanim, because the person is really motivated. They're sincerely want to be connected to godliness. They value that itself. They don't just value their own benefit. They appreciate the intrinsic value of godliness and knowing God and being involved in Hisbainos and Avodas Hashem and this whole thing. They want to learn Chassidus, understand it, apply it to their davening, apply it to their life. In theory, they would like to do that, but they don't really see how to do that. And I think a lot of people fall into this category where they, maybe they learn a little Chassidus out of obligation, but everything stays very abstract and removed, and it's words. They don't feel like they understand it, and so therefore they don't know what to do with it. But at least they're ready to really understand it. If somebody would show them a path and explain to them in a way they can relate to, great, they'll get it because they're showing up, they're coming to the Chassidish Shiur. Because at least they appreciate the value in theory of doing his of studying godliness and thinking about it. And he really desires it. If somebody would show him how to do it, he'll do it. He doesn't know how to though. And he really desires to come close to it and achieve it. But again, he doesn't have a path forward, so therefore he doesn't know what to do. So it remains theoretical. And he puts in the effort, so he is trying, and he works and he learns, and then it doesn't have the desired effect because he doesn't know how to do it right. And so therefore it's not affecting this inspiration in his mind and his heart. But he's not doing it for himself. He's doing it for the God. He's doing it because he knows this is what he's supposed to be doing, because it's a good thing. He wants to be close to God. So that it should be revealed and part of his soul, and he wants to be serving Hashem. And so this stage is the foundation and the opening to really anyone that wants to search God with truth and sincerity, like the Mitteler Rebbe always says in his introductions, that he's writing for people that are searching for God with truth and sincerity. In other words, a person that wants to do it l'shma, they really sincerely want to serve Hashem. They're not looking for their own benefit, not physically, not spiritually. They're not looking for, right, for these extrinsic things, not Ganed, not Elam Haba. They just want God. And they're ready to put in the work. They're ready to come learn and do Avaida, but they don't necessarily know how to properly apply it in their Avaida. Madrega hagimel l'mayla mizu hu hanikra machshava taiva shemitzarefes l'mais. And then the third level, which is higher than this, is what's called a good thought. And this type of thought is what gets connected to action. So it says that Hashem connects a good thought to, in other words, a simple meaning is that if a person intends to do a good thing, Hashem considers it as if he did the thing itself. The simple meaning is that if a person has intention to do a good thing, even if they don't actually get to do it, Hashem considers it as if they did it. But there's another explanation, which is what he's referring to here, like it brings in Tanya, that when a person does a hisbainos and they're studying godliness and they understand it, if they understand it at least to a level where they recognize that this is something that they should do, even if they don't fully understand it enough to actually create a feeling in their heart, so then that's enough. That creates a love and fear that's at least able to motivate action, and that gets connected to action. And the idea is that a person, for example, could, let's say, go to a doctor or they have a coach or whatever it is, and the person tells that they trust the person, and so when they tell them that this is what you should do, the person believes in their doctor or their coach or whatever it is to the point where they're excited and motivated to listen to what they say because they believe that, yes, if I follow his instruction, that his method, I'm going to get the results I'm looking for, even though the person themselves doesn't understand it enough to see it for themselves. And so they don't have the actual love and fear on their own for these actions. They don't really on their own appreciate why this would work or they should do this way or that way, but they understand it enough to motivate their actions. So that's what we're discussing here. So this is a good thought that connects to action. This is what's called a love and fear, but not a love and fear that's felt in the heart, just a love and fear that a person is very motivated to take the actions to either do what they're supposed to do and stay away from something that they're not supposed to do. And generally, again, this is where a person has, let's say, a child to a parent, if they're really, have a good relationship with their parents and they're obedient and they're going to listen, take very seriously what their parents tell them to do or not to do and things like that. And the same thing with a teacher or a mentor, and the same thing with Shulchan Aruch or a Rebbe or these kind of things, where a person's told that you should do this and this is going to be good for you and don't do that, it's going to be bad for you. So they're going to be very vigilant and very motivated to do those actions. An explanation is, so now he's going to go back to the second level and explain the difference between the second level and this third level. And the explanation is, now the second level that we talked about previously, even though the person has good intentions and it's for godliness, But it's only this general way that they have the general ratzon. They want to be close to God, and they don't want to be far, but they don't associate that with a clear path forward. And so it doesn't get plugged into specific actions. And this desire comes because they feel that the godliness is a great thing. They recognize it in their own mind. But they're not motivated to take a certain action or not to do a certain action because he feels that it's very far from him. He doesn't see a way that he can approach it in a way that's relevant to him. He wants to be close, but he hasn't come close yet. And this is called just acknowledgement in their mind that they believe in it, but not something that they have any real understanding or experience with. And therefore, that kind of thought, the fact that they recognize and believe that it's good and true, that's not called a good thought. In other words, it's not a useful thought. It's not motive connecting to any practical actions. It's called just a plain thought, not called a good thought. Yuvon zal derech dugma, we can understand this based on an example, but mili da'alma from physical things, worldly matters. We see that a person can think about something in the world in two different ways. Ha'alif, and this is what we would call a theoretical thought, like a dream and just like a wish and a fantasy, or a practical thought. Ha'alif, machshava, one type of thought. A person thinks about something that's very good and very precious in their eyes. That's very important to them. Let's say the person thinks about the great treasure, all the money that belongs to somebody else. A person could think about Bill Gates' money or something like that, where there's a very wealthy person and they think, wow, they have all this money. And people like to talk about it, they like to gossip about it, and things like that. They like to dream. Imagine if I had all that money. A person thinks about all the great power and honor of a king or some officer, right? These days, these celebrities, and people like to dream about or talk about. They have a certain interest imagining these people and daydreaming about having these kind of things. This is called a cold thought. Because the person doesn't feel that it's relevant to him at all. The money, he doesn't imagine that he's going to get the money. He doesn't imagine that he's going to have that honor or power. He can just, he said, wow, that'd be great to have it. He would like it in theory, but it's not motivating to do anything. It just, he talks about it. He thinks about it. He ain't hadover boy love because it doesn't come to him. He's not getting the money. He's not getting the honor. He just likes to think about it because it's a very precious and important thing in his eyes. And he would wish he would get it. So he likes to dream. Imagine it'd be great if I could have such a wonderful thing, have all that money or power or honor. And so he daydreams about it, right? And there used to be a television show called the Life of the Rich and Famous, where they would show the way people lived, and it's like people like. That's kind of one of the things when people play the lottery and something like this, where it's not even necessarily that they think they're going to win, but it's they get to dream and imagine what they'll do with the money if they would win. So they get to entertain that fantasy. But that kind of a fantasy is not really a practical, actionable thing. The second type of thought. This is where a person thinks about something good, but that's relevant to him, that the person knows they can actually achieve and actually get. Like, let's say the person is going to have a business deal that they're actually going to make money on. So if a person tells him, I had this deal or whatever, and the person actually get excited about it because he feels, yes, I could do that, and he could actually envision it happening to him. It's realistic, in other words. Or if the person says, he's going to get an opportunity to get a certain, honor, promotion, this or whatever, he's going to have some sort of position of power and honor and things like that. Or he's going to get some sort of treasure in some way. So if a person actually has an opportunity, even if it's a much smaller thing, a person can be more actually motivated and excited to by that kind of thought, even though it's also a fantasy because the person doesn't know if it's actually going to happen. But when a person has that kind of opportunity come up and they see that it's something that they could achieve, so they're going to go for it and they're going to try and they're going to apply themselves. This type of a thought, again, even though it's just an imagination, it's like a fantasy, or they're envisioning a future possibility that they haven't achieved yet, but they're imagining something that they think they could actually achieve, and therefore they do it they're actually moved by it and they're drawn to it. And this is what's called being moved. It actually spurs a person to action, in other words. Kanaida, as is known, we see tangibly, that if a person gets news about some good news about their business that was very relevant to them, that they were waiting, that their investment went up or whatever it is, the person gets totally preoccupied in the thought, and especially when it comes to planning and doing things, right? People get very into their business. And this is at least an inspiration that happens in thought, which that the person becomes very attached to this thought, they become preoccupied with it, where they're always thinking about it and they're always planning and worrying and whatever it is about this idea. Blush in Yiddish, I think it's supposed to be klep. Klep sehr stark die Machshava as es art und riert im Zerhu. The person is very attached to this idea, this thought, and it moves him very much, very deeply. And this is what we call the person he really hears the thought. Hot good their heart in their machshava. They feel that it's personally relevant, this thought. The similar and the sign for that a person is on the second level of thought or the second level of motivation, who that the person becomes very preoccupied with it, so they're always thinking about it, and it actually moves them in some way to take some sort of action and change their life in some way. Blush in Yiddish, far trogin un far numin. The person is very preoccupied and very busy with it. So just like that's with physical things, right? You can see a person, it could be even a small childish thing. The person's excited that they're going to be the class head of some project for their class play or become whatever, and they get very into it, right? To become, they'll be more excited for them to be the class president than for somebody else to become the real president, right? Because it's them. So just like it's like that with physical things, so too, when a person learns a godly thing and does hizbainus, if they understand it in a way where they can actually see that it's relevant to them, and they know what to do, and therefore they're very motivated, they can plug that motivation into something. The person becomes very attached to it, very preoccupied. In other words, if a person understands it as a real thing, it's something that they can think about all day and actually get preoccupied to the point where it's hard to get their attention because they're so, like you see, a person's busy thinking about their business, and it's hard to get their attention because they're thinking about it so much and so deeply. This is what's called a good thought. And this type of a thought is at least going to connect to action, even if a person doesn't feel something in their heart from it. But when a person sees it, yeah, there's something here that I can see how this mime or this sikha, if I'll understand it, it could really change my life. And so they're learning it with interest, and they're learning it. The key is that they're looking for how does this apply to me, and they actually see that there's something relevant they can get out of it that's going to make a difference in their life. Not in a self-centered way, but in a way of that I should actually take a lesson from here, and it's something that I can apply all over. If I would take, the message, if you take even a simple sikha, a simple mimer, these kind of things that we take for granted, and that kids come and the same Dvar Torah every week and every year, it's the same thing over and over again. But if you really take these simple sikhas, mimarim, and learn them with this eye of how would I look at this before and how do I look at it now, and what would it look like if I make this kind of paradigm shift in my life, and look for different examples of that, a person can live their whole life with it, and it's a very powerful thing. So when a person learns with that eye, then they get interested in a much deeper, in a different way. Hatahainu his typhus tolda shenailad mimenu hu ava v'yirish negela ma'asok upon him. And this type of a thought brings about a product that creates a love and fear, not necessarily in the heart, but at least in action, that they're very motivated to do what they're supposed to do because they see that it's gonna they believe that it's going to benefit them. So it's still just called a machshava because it's only a belief of anticipation of something they haven't experienced yet personally, but they see that there's a path forward that they believe is going to actually be relevant to them and help them. Kiva machshava kara hanal, because in the cold thought, hagam sheraitzelis karev, even though in theory he would want to become close to lispal, to be inspired, ach adayin loinispal, but he was not yet moved. Gam bebechin shmiya b'machshava, even in this level of thought of just feeling is personally relevant. Alami rochik levad yed beidak, and how he just is inspired only in this very distant way that he believes that it's true. But tolda shenoiled mimenu, and so what's the birth, the effect that comes out from that kind of regular thought, the distant thought, which is the second level we said before, as opposed to this, or the first level of thought, which is the second of the three levels. Ein rak inyan bechinas ve'inyan habusha shemisbayesh. The only thing that's caused by that type of a thought, where a person believes it's true but doesn't feel that it's achievable, is just that it causes a person to feel a sense of shame, that they feel that they're a certain humility, that they feel they're low, they're just a beginner, they're nothing compared. It's like, if you see this master artist or musician or whatever, anybody that's at a very high level, so a person feels like, oh, wow, I'm nothing, I can do that. And the same thing, the person believes in godliness and they read these stories about Hasidim and Rebbeim and Tzaddikim, they feel like, oh, I'm a nothing, I'm nowhere near there. So that's in a certain way a healthy thing to have that sense of humility. The person feels a sense of shame on himself. How far he is from God, from what it could be, and how low he is. It also causes a general sense that this world becomes less important to them because they feel that godliness really is where it's at. This is, I think, the idea that it says just eating the kasha of Teichit makes a person lose their geschmack, their enjoyment of this world, of Ilam Haza. So that's like this type of thing, that the person loses that sense of being able to be really fully into Ilam Haza, because they feel like at the end of the day, it's not really where it's at. Because he accepted that his vitus and godliness is an important thing to the point where the person will maybe sigh and groan about it, so the person will feel a little bit bothered by it to the point that they'll give a krechts. Blush in Yiddish, added up, fallen by sich, sehr stark, und die Welt wird sehr herabgefallen. That the person feels very lowly to himself, and he feels that the world also becomes low, less important in his eyes. And that this type of a cold thought only brings a person to have the commitment that they're at least going to stay away from doing anything wrong. Because they feel like, okay, it's the right thing to do. So even though I'm not motivated to do it, but they believe it's the right thing to do, so they'll do it. But they do it kind of begrudgingly a little bit. They're not really motivated. They don't do it with enthusiasm. Who madrega, so they just do, in other words, the minimum that they need. And it's also done without life and vitality. Who madrega hayeser katana, and this is the lowest level. But this can at least bring a person to the lower Gan Eden. Because at the end of the day, they're doing it for godliness because of this godly hisbainus. In other words, they recognize that it's important to serve Hashem and to do what's right. And so they feel a sense of responsibility and a good Jewish guilt to do it. But this is not called love and fear. It's just called like Avaida with Kabbalah Sol, in other words. But there's no real motivation. There's no real positive motivation there with any sort of inspiration in life. It's just the person feels a duty to do it, so they do what they have to do. In contrast, the lowest level that we mentioned, that first level, which has no real godliness in it, the person just wants to feel inspired, doesn't really want the godliness canal, only subconsciously inside the Shalai Lishma is Lishma. So this is better than that because the person really does want godliness, but they still don't have a real hispilus. So hopefully now we understand the difference between these three levels. But in contrast, the good thought, which is the level, this third level that we're talking about, about this, it says, Gam Kein Shema Yisrael. This is also included in this idea that it says, Hear Yisrael. And if a person, in other words, if a person understands godliness, the idea of Shema, then we say, V'ahavta, you'll love Hashem. You could read V'ahavta as a command that you should love Hashem, but you can also read it as a Havtacha, as a promise that if you understand godliness, we guarantee that you're going to feel love for it, that you're going to be motivated with this intrinsic motivation because you have a godly soul that gets turned on. But in order for the learning, the hisbonenus to have that effect, the Shema has to be there, where you understand it in a way that you can personally relate to. So the lowest level of relating to it personally is at least a person can anticipate and believe that if I do this, I'm going to achieve what I'm supposed to do. And so that motivates them to do it. But this is, again, the relationship of like a person that is listening to, let's say, a teacher or a doctor or this kind of thing, where it's like an indirect, they don't have personal experience with it yet. So they don't have an actual love and fear in their heart. They have love and fear that motivates action. Because here, when a person has a good thought, the main thing is that they have this inspiration that's coming from the understanding, and this from this thought, and actually creates a certain love. But yet the person isn't really motivated in their heart, at all, rak machshava, just in their thought. So in other words, they're very interested because they feel that this is relevant to them, and so and like you see, there's a big difference when a person's learning something or reading something in a way that they feel like this is going to actually benefit me, versus a person's learning it out of a sense of obligation. And like we said, this love is only for action. And it's not really an inner thing, unlike in the heart. But when it comes to action, to stay away from bad and do good, this is a much stronger motivation than what comes from just that feeling of that I should do it out of a sense of commitment, out of a sense of duty, out of a sense of guilt, which comes from that cold thought. With the cold thought, the love is only coming out of a sense of that it's the right thing to do, out of a sense of duty. And the person doesn't have that excitement in their thought of really anticipating that they could see that this is going to get them anywhere. And like kind of like an employee that's just doing what they're told to do, but they don't understand what they're doing or why it matters, versus a person that, let's say, they could also be an employee, but let's say they're on commission and they appreciate that they do a good job, it's going to benefit them and they're really excited to do it, things like that. But it comes with an inspiration in the mind. That the person really truly desires, at least in their thought, to have a revelation of godliness in their good actions and stay away from something bad. Because again, in other words, you see this very much with like sincere bachrim and things like that, the young, boys and girls, or like a new Baal Tshuva, where they believe that what the Torah says is true, what the Rebbe says is true, and that doing a mitzvah is going to help bring Mashiach, and it's going to bring benefit to people, and they'll tell people, a mitzvah, yeah, you should put on tefillin and things, but it's all that not from their own experience and because they really know it. It's because they believe what they were told. So it's a little bit indirect, but it's with a much greater chayas. They're really excited to do all the things that they're told to do, and all the hayrais and all the things that their mashpiyim tell them and from and stuff like that. The calls and nikra dechilu v'rechimu, and so all of this is still called a love and fear. Hagam shenegei l'mais v'lvad, even though it's only a love and fear that relates to action, not in the heart. Aval yesh bahem ar v'chayis gadol b'machshava, but there's a very big light and very big chayis. There's a lot of vitality and inspiration and motivation in this thought. In this, even though it's kind of like a fantasy, in other words, it's not real understanding. And you have this a lot where people, they have these words and they're imagining things, but they're not really understanding it yet. It's just, they say the words about godliness and Adibra Tachtonim and Mashiach and all these things, and it's all fantasies. It's not like connected to the real world. It's all in their imagination. Um, I mean, lahavdil, like people, get excited by get into other kind of things, but that are fantasies. But it's that's a tool, even though that's not real understanding yet, but it's a tool to start getting plugged in, and it's a step in the right direction. Like when a person is thinking about and fantasizing about something in worldly things that's very relevant to him, that he's imagining he's going to be achieved, and therefore he's working hard towards getting that. Where the person actually has a love in their thought, and they're moved to it, right? Because let's say, the person, whenever he has some goal for himself, he wants to learn to play an instrument, and he's going to make a band, let's say, and they get excited about that thought, right? So even though it's just like a fantasy that they're envisioning, they haven't actually achieved it yet. They don't actually know what it's like, but they're really motivated to do it. And so it's a similar thing. The yira mehipuche, and the person has fear from the opposite, anything that they view as that's going to damage their vision for themselves. Like in business, a person is afraid something's going to damage their business and cause a loss. And this is enough to understand. So a person can understand godliness, and so I think you have a lot of like the simple Hasidim are on that level of a simple thought where they believe it's real, they believe it's true, but they don't really understand it. And then you have a lot of people that understand it more and they're very into it, but they're still really just saying words. They don't actually understand necessarily the words that they're saying, but they feel like this is real, and so they're very into it. The Rebbe said, and they repeat it, and that kind of stuff. But it's not something that they can see it with their own eyes in the world and point and say this. This is, I see it and I experience it. So it's kind of secondhand and indirect. But Madrega Dalid, the fourth level, Shalamayla Mizu, which is higher than this good thought. Hu asher mechamas hasbaininus alakus shemispal b'machshav b'chitayv and. This is where, as a result of studying the godly thing, and they understood it very well in their mind, like we said before. Miyad mispal b'libe b'chinas espilus morgeshes ba'ar v'chayis gadol pimius yoser me'ispais machshava hamachshava now. Now that as soon as they learn it and understand it, it right away also is something that they feel and in their heart, and it's with a much greater vitality and with much more light and much more clarity, much more inspiration, and it's much deeper. And it's much more personally relevant. And the main thing is because here it's coming from a different level of understanding, where it's something that they've actually can see and experience in their life firsthand. So it's like the difference between, you can have a kid that their parents told them to stay, don't do drugs, it's bad for you, or something like that. And so they listen and they really are afraid of it because they believe it's bad for them. And then you have somebody else that really knows firsthand because they experienced it. And so they really have like a actual physical feeling of fear or disgust for these kind of things, or like an adult teaching a kid to drive, and the kid doesn't really appreciate the danger, but like as an adult, they can really imagine the pain of God forbid, hitting somebody and killing somebody, God forbid, or these kind of things. It's like they feel it in their heart. You see a bubby watching a little baby fall, and their heart jumps, and because they actually feel like the potential pain of a baby falling and getting hurt, God forbid, and these kind of things. And so it's real to them. And so they right away feel it in their heart. But that only comes when a person understands, their understanding is grounded in real world experience, something that they've actually experienced in their life. It's not just words, it's not just levels, it's not just something they believe is true and they hear secondhand. That's something that they've experienced. And it's like a person that went to a doctor or listened to a coach, and they went through a process and they actually experienced the benefits for themselves, and they experienced, let's say, the negative, both positive and negative effects of doing what they're supposed to do and not doing what they're not supposed to do. They see that it's real, and they really want the benefits, and they're really afraid of those negative effects because it's not just a joke, it's not a game, it's a real thing. So they right away feel that real feeling. Ve'ein ze b'chinas espilus elokus mamish shemargish gam halev hanal. And this is not yet what a person that's experienced the godliness, where the pure godly inspiration of the nefshel kiss is shining into the heart. We're going to talk about that later when we talk about the levels of nefshel kiss. Shehu b'neshama ha'elokis, that's a level of the godly soul. Shemispasha gambaguf, where it's able to shine also into the body. Shalamai lahar begam madrega chamishes. That level where the godly soul shines into the physical body is higher than even the fifth level we're going to talk about now. Now we're talking about a person that they're appreciating godliness on a rational level. And like if you learn the Maimer by Yemesh Asar of the Rebbe, he talks about different reasons why the wise person would choose God versus choosing Avodah Zarah and things like that. And so that's the idea that there's a person can look from a rational perspective and appreciate that I should, let's say, have delayed gratification and have self-control and live a good life and live a life of principles and conviction um, and things like that. And that even though, yes, I'm giving up certain things temporarily, but in the long run, it's going to be better for me. It's going to be better for me physically. It's going to be better for me spiritually. I'm going to be connected to something that's meaningful. And a person can actually appreciate intellectually, mitzad their nefesh tivis, and understand that this is the right thing to do. And both that it's going to be good for me and actually feel that this is, going to bring the benefit it's going to bring and appreciate the dangers that come and the damage that's done from living an ungodly life, and the person also appreciates the deeper sense that being connected to something of meaning and purpose gives you a sense of fulfillment and all kinds of these kind of benefits that are more important and more real than the fleeting things of this world. So that this is the level we're talking about now, where the nefesh tivis itself is understanding that it should want to serve God and be connected to it and realize that this is good for it, even though, but it's not just that it's even if he's not doing it for those benefits, but it's something that's very real to him. So I appreciate that. And this is what it says: you should love Hashem with all of your heart. In other words, it has to be felt in the heart. And here we're talking about the physical heart, which is including, like it says, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. So a person has to explain and understand these godly things until they recognize that this is good for me, even if I want the physical good in this world, both that part of me that just wants to live a good life, I'm going to live a good life in that sense, and the part of me that wants to be part of something bigger and have transcendence and live life of meaning, and I'm willing to sacrifice for that. So also that part of me should recognize that this is the way to have real meaning and purpose in my life. And this is the main mitzvah of the service of the heart in davening. And before davening and after davening, when we learn and think about it, we have to learn Chassidus in a way that is real enough and relevant enough that it actually is going to change how we feel about things. It's going to change our priorities in life. And we're going to actually see that this is if I want to have a good life, I want to do Torah mitzvahs and serve Hashem. And both physically and spiritually and psychologically and emotionally at every level, this is going to be good for me. Ligas ase machshava kolkach, to exert himself in his thought, to study and think about these things so much, ad yispal halev davka, until it's something that he'll feel also specifically in his heart. Benikra pulchana derchimusa, and this is called the labor of love. Pulchana mamish, and it's a true labor, it's a true work. Biyigia rabba, it takes a lot of effort to achieve this. Ki b'mile de alma, because when it comes to physical things, as soon as a person thinks about a good thing, they think about money or cake or whatever it is, right away he gets excited. So as soon as a person recognizes in their thought that they could get this thing because a person experiences the physical stuff, so it's right away gets them excited in their heart as well. It's much more easy to have that connection because we live in a physical world, and the physical body and the nefesh tivis is made out of the physical world, and so it naturally feels connected to these things. It's not like going against its nature. It's not like asking a person to be selfless and things like that. Right away, naturally, the heart gets drawn to it with a fiery passion, a fiery yearning. If a person thinks about something that's going to be bad, it's going to cause them a loss, they're going to get sad and bothered by it, and they're going to feel it emotionally. Aval ba'avaidas Hashem loy bekal yumshach hispalus b'leiv me'hispalus ha'machshav. When you're trying to get the nefesh tivis in the service of Hashem to get excited and get inspired, it's not so easy because it's a little bit removed from it. It's not just natural for it to connect to these things where, you can explain to it that it makes sense to give up, to give up the cake and go do something good, but it takes training. Like when you train a little kid to share, and they naturally he wants it for himself. And if you just show him the ice cream, he's going to be excited. But you say, "Oh, you have to give it to your friend." It's not gonna be so excited at first. You have to teach him, why it's good and explain to him that you have to care about other people and we want other people to treat us that way, and even really deeper things that God put us in the world for a reason and He gives us these things for us to do it. And if we don't use it for the right reason, then we'll take it away and things like that. So, you could train a person, and you should start from when they're very young, get trained in thinking in a godly way. The earlier you start, the better, because otherwise it's hard to undo the programming of the Gates Sahara. But it takes effort. It takes a lot of effort to reprogram the Nefesh Tivis so that it actually wants to do the right thing and actually, wants to be kind and share and do all these kind of things. Mitam shebechinas alakus shebechinas hesbeinas hazais lo nimshach begili beliv yim bebechinas makef b'mayachlu. And this is because the godliness of this understanding, this hesbeinas, doesn't shine and reveal way into the heart. It's just perceived in the mind, but it's a little bit theoretical to the person, and it takes effort to make it practical and relevant to the person. And there's a lot of levels within this level of arousing the heart, and the person could feel certain things and other things. It could feel more deeply, less deeply, and things like that. The oifin hispalus halev, and the way the heart is inspired, sometimes in the positive, sometimes in the negative, and things like that. For example, some people will sometimes be inspired in the heart more than the mind. Some people are more emotional than they are intellectual. Some people will get more inspired by happy things, and some people get more inspired by the sad things. It depends on the person's nature and what type of things they think about. But whichever way it is, this is called actual love and fear, where the person is actually feeling something real in their heart, and it's a real relevant thing that they experience firsthand. But in general, we call this the natural love and fear because it's coming from the nefesh tivis. But still, none of this is called the godly inspiration that's coming from the nefesh kiss. Like we're going to explain, this is all generating a love and fear and inspiration based on the intellect, based on that they understand that it's good for them. And in general, in Chassidus, a lot of times we talk about iskafia and ishapcha. All of these levels of nefesh tivis fall into the category of iskafia, because we generally think of iskafia as just using willpower to control yourself. But more broadly, and I think more often in Chassidus, it's referring to this, where a person through understanding can mayach shar, the mind can roll over the heart, where they can change what they want based on an understanding that they realize that in the end, this is going to be good for me. And so it's worth giving up the temporary pleasure that I want now and not just fulfilling my fantasies, because they understand that, right? Like a person sees money. So naturally, the nefesh tivis wants to take it. But the person knows that, it's stealing. If I take it, I'm going to go to jail and I'm going to suffer. And it's not worth it. So the person's machshava is able to convince them to, even be afraid to touch it because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want whatever. But it's really a skafia. They're holding themselves back because really, if there was no rules, their nature is that they would want it. And it's just that their intellect is able to overrule that and change how they feel. And because they can, understand the bigger picture. So that's all. Anything time a person is having any sort of motivation or inspiration that's coming based on tam v'das, based on a reason, that's called in general skafia. Ishapcha is where, like, it's coming from the nefesh lakis, where it's intrinsic motivation. It's not just based on a reason, like we'll see. And about this, it says that the closest to God is good for me. Li mamash, the person feels that it's personally good for me. Like a person that experiences the benefits of having emunah and bitachon in Hashem, a person that experiences the brachas they get from the Rebbe in their actual life, and they see how following what the Rebbe says, brings them benefit physically and spiritually, things like that. It's a real thing that they experience firsthand. It's not just that they trust what it says in a book. Begam ke nikra elakai bekirbi, and this is called God being inside of me, that godliness is being revealed within the person, although this is only in the level of the Neshativis. But this is it's a big thing. V'hainu gam kin inyan la'ava as Hashem b'leiv davka, and this is the mitzvah to love Hashem with the heart, specifically in the heart. Kihu chayecha, like we said, because it's your life, mitzana neshama, kana, like we said before, that a person should recognize that this is really my life, this is really my purpose, and who I really am, and so therefore I should be motivated by these things. V'hine, v'chines ava v'yira shenoiled b'hisgalos halev pulu, and so the effect, this love and fear that's revealed in the heart, causes a much deeper motivation for both doing good and staying away from bad. Again, like a person that has firsthand experience with something that they really feel, yeah, you got to do this. This is, they know this is going to be good for you. And something else, no, that's stay far away. That's really dangerous. And they really feel it. It's not just secondhand. The person is going to do positive mitzvahs with a great love and a great thirst, a great enjoyment, relish. The person really feels a lot of light and a lot of vitality and excitement in doing the mitzvah. And the opposite, the person will really get upset about something that's preventing them from doing the right thing. And they're going to want to stay away from anything bad. And they'll guard themselves from it, but with a passion, with a fervor. They're going to really adamantly and get emotional. Like, no, that's I don't want that for me. I don't want that for my family. It's bad. It's negative, and it's not just it's not just they're going to do it because they're told, right? They really personally feel moved by it and or offended by it, things like that. Like a person that's doing their business with their heart, where they really are passionate about it. That if anything that the person is doing for the business, they're going to do it with excitement and with alacrity, with zest and zeal, because they love making the profit, and so they're really, they're excited to make a sale or make a deal or whatever it is. And the person will guard themselves from anything. They'll get, if somebody does something that's going to mess up their business or scare away a customer, they'll get really upset about it because they feel it. With the same type of feeling in the heart. And this is the foundation for all the 248 positive mitzvahs. That the real way, the only way to fully and properly do the mitzvahs is when it's being done out of a sense of love. Because otherwise, if a person is just doing it out of guilt and this and that, they're not going to do it right. If you're to do it, you have to really appreciate it and be motivated. And the same thing, the fear, this true fear of God is the source of the 365 negative mitzvahs. And this is the chesed gvura of the heart. And this is what it says, to love Hashem and to serve Him. That true service comes through this love and fear. And this is a much higher level of inspiration and motivation than the love and fear that comes just from the thought, where it's detached from the person. It's not really personal. Okay, now we're moving into the fifth level, and then we're going to mention then even a sixth level. And these levels are the nefesh hativis transcending itself a little bit. Reb Hillel explains that these are only achievable when the nefesh kiss begins to shine into a person. But the two go together, and you have to refine the nefesh hativis. But basically, this is where a person starts to appreciate not just their personal benefit to themselves, but they really want to be altruistic and appreciate that they're there to serve. Like they talk about, like a leader that sees himself as a servant, and they're really committed to a cause, with self-sacrifice, and it's something about something that's bigger than them, and they want to spread it to the world and spread it to other people, and really be committed and dedicated to that. And you can have that type of serious nefesh that comes from Tavadas because the person understands that this is so important and this is so big and it's bigger than me, and so they're ready to commit themselves to it, like we'll see. Madrega Hahe, and the fifth level, Shalamayla Gamizu, which is higher even than this. This is what's called the kavana of the heart, which is higher than the inspiration of the heart. So the inspiration of the heart, like he's explained, comes from just seeing how it's personally relevant. And the kavana is recognizing that there's something deeper here, which is the real purpose, which is bigger than me. Ubira davar, the explanation, liyesh do as is known, Kigam shemispal beliba, hispilus gemura, betshuka, v'chedva, that even if a person has the complete epitome of inspiration in the heart with a true yearning and a true joy or a true bitterness from this hispaidus, when they get inspired in their heart, the whole understanding, the whole length of the idea, godly idea that is causing the inspiration, that all has to get kind of go away and just be condensed to what is the practical point that comes from all that that's relevant to me. All that's left is what of that understanding is relevant to the person to inspire them in their heart. This is just what comes out, what's called the tamsis, the distilled point of, which is just a summary of the whole hisbainos that they were thinking about mamali or saivim, how God is found within the world or how it transcends the world. Ukai gavna. Shuhu ha'ikr v'shayrish ha'kavana hanal tukula kame kalocha shukulu kanal, which is the main, that understanding of godliness, that's the main source and root of what this kavanah, like we said, to recognize how everything in the world is like nothing compared to Hashem. So by understanding godliness, they're come to recognize that, you know what? Godliness is more important than these things in the world. And me serving Hashem and doing what's right is more important than just getting what I want, and therefore it's worth giving it up and things like that. So that understanding is what's going to cause them to have that motivation. And the fact that the heart is getting very inspired by that kitzer, that little practical point that comes out from it, we consider this to be a level of inspiration compared to the appreciation of the idea itself with its whole length and breadth and depth. And I think an example for this is, and this is the example that Rabbi Kel taught me, is like when they were working on the Manhattan Project to make the atomic bomb. So you had the physicists like Einstein and these people that really appreciated the physics, and they were interested in understanding how the atoms work and all these kind of things. And then you had like the government and the military, and they weren't interested. They didn't know about that. They were just, well, they told them, well, based on these equations, E equals MC squared and all this stuff, we believe you can make a bomb. Then you had their interest. So they're just interested in what comes out from it that relates to them. But somebody that's really passionate about the subject itself just wants to learn it and understand it for its own sake. And that's really what's called like learning the Shema. It's a real sense of curiosity and interest that goes beyond just what's gonna be in it for me and how it's going to relate to me. So that's an idea of real intrinsic motivation and an aspect of transcendence that's really pulling the person out of themselves. So this is considered kanas compared to the hispaalus of the richos inyan haloki shemachavim b'meichei v'libai, where the person is studying and thinking about it in their mind and their heart. Sham ba'oich v'reichev, and with the whole length and width shalamayle daimi lachavi l'klalas b'ayis b'leiv, and there it's higher than just one particular application, which is what the heart was getting inspired from before. Like, for example, in physical things, When a person is really passionate with the whole depth of their heart in some activity that they're doing, some good activity, their whole soul gets drawn into it. You see, anytime a person is really passionate, really obsessed with something, especially when it's like a good thing, and they're really dedicated, committed to this cause, that their whole self gets drawn into it. That he can't yet bring it down to what's the specific benefit that it's going to have for them because he's too busy in his mind, his heart, thinking about the thing itself. And they see that, yes, this is very valuable and very important and whatever. And they see that it could have, they're sure it has all kinds of ramifications and all kinds of applications. But they're not getting excited by the application. They're getting excited by the thing itself because it's beautiful and it's valuable and it's more intrinsic. Like you see people that are very into all kinds of things, and they call it geeking out on it or whatever, but they're really passionate about the thing itself. Rak be'etzem eichus taiv hadavar ahu, just because how good the thing itself is. V'hu hanikra b'chinas meichin degadlos, and this is what's called a mature understanding, shebechabad hulu. And this is like, for example, the difference between a kid and adult is a child. Let's say he's going to want to learn something because they're going to get a candy, they're going to get a prize, they're going to get a grade. And a person that's really mature just wants to know it because they want to know. And so they're interested in the thing itself, not just what this is going to do for me. And even though in this level there is really also love and fear, but the love and fear is more hidden because the person isn't focused on the feeling. They're totally drawn into, it's actually a higher level of bittul, where they're totally drawn into the idea that they're passionate about. And they're so focused on that, they don't get a chance to stop and think about it in personal terms and have their own personal feeling about it. Their feelings are all drawing them towards wanting to understand it more and to appreciate it more and develop it more and bring it to other people, and they're just not thinking about themselves in the equation. And this is what's called intellectual love and fear. And so intellectual love and fear does not mean that it's just intellectual like the machshava. This means that they understand it, and they understand it in a real way where they can see it in the world and in themselves, and it's something, and they see everywhere, and it's actually much deeper, and it includes this love and fear of the heart. This is higher than the love and fear of the heart, and this is what the Rebbe talks about when he talks about the Yevavayis HaMaichin, is like this level of being able to be interested and motivated to just want to know godliness for godliness' sake and really be passionate about it in this deeper way, in this more mature way. And this difference between the natural love and fear and the intellectual love and fear. So in other words, the natural love and fear is that the heart, naturally, I love whatever the Nefesh loves. I want to have a good life and these kind of things. And so if I appreciate that godliness is going to give, God gives me money and health and wealth, or is going to give me these spiritual benefits. So I appreciate, okay, I'm going to get something good from it. That's why it's called natural. But here, this is where the intellect is able to create a new inspiration where the person is actually transcending themselves and they actually want to be part of godliness for its own sake, and they actually come to love and appreciate the godliness itself, not just because of how it relates is what it's going to bring to them. And this is the difference, that the natural love and fear is separate. It's removed from, disconnected from the essential hisbainis. Blush in Yiddish, nikra der bechein, therefore, that he's inspired just from the bechein, from the what they call the therefore, the application. So what does this mean for me? Fun, therefore, as es is azai bechein, that because this is true, therefore such and such. And so they're getting inspired not from the truth itself, but from what it happens comes from it, like the bomb, not from the physics. But the love and the intellectual love and fear is not separate from the thing itself. They love the thing itself, and this is what's really called intrinsic motivation, where they're just curious and they want to know it because it itself is intrinsically valuable and beautiful and meaningful. And this is the idea that a person appreciates godliness and serving Hashem, and that for its own sake is valuable. And this love and fear just comes automatically, and it's without any conscious choice or decision. It's just an automatic thing. And this intellectual love and fear also automatically shines in the heart. Like the person is gonna be joyful. Let's say, it's Simchas Torah, and they think about the beauty of the Torah. They're gonna really dance and really clap their hands. They're not gonna be intellectual and removed and cold. That's a big mistake people make, and I hear people describe that way the Mitteler Rebbe and his Chassidim and things like that, and I think it's a mistake. It does say, like the Alter Rebbe says, that the Mitteler Rebbe's Avodah is really like we're talking about later, the levels of the kiss, where it was very, very deep on the inside. He was burning up with fire to the point where he would like dive and he would look on the outside very calm and cool. But it says that he would be so burning up with fire that he would like sweat, and the sweat would drip from the tip of his hat. He used to wear like a pointy hat a little bit. So it's true that there's such a thing, but it's not something that negates, makes a person like cold and intellectual at all. It's just that it could be so intense that the person could be so focused and so passionate. And like you see with, again, even in physical things, any person that is really passionate about their work, they get into it and they don't eat and they don't sleep, and and they get, when they get a new understanding or breakthrough, they get excited and they jump and it's with real excitement. The simon lazeh, and the sign for this level, Kuntres HaHispaalus is the fact that the person is always excited, always interested. In other words, the bechein, the excitement in the heart, once in a while you can think about it and get the person excited, but then it goes away. But a person that's on this level, they're always passionate about it because this is something that they really care about in a much deeper way. This is their main passion in life, and it's constant. The light tips like cloud, it doesn't stop. Unlike the natural love and fear, that sometimes they lose it and they wake it back up again. It's something they you need to always restart. But this intellectual love and fear really changes the person's nature to the point where they're always interested, they're always excited. And therefore, we don't call this effort for the person. It's not effort anymore because they love it, they enjoy it. It's not so much of a work for them. Like it explains elsewhere, al pasuk, al dami lach, that who can be compared to you? So I'll sing your praises, and I'll never be silent. That the the lower waters are constantly calling to want to go up to Hashem. And so this is this level that even the lower water, which is the idea of the nefesh tivis, the physical world, the nefesh bahamis, if when it reveals its godly source, it has this constant passion to want to go up and connect to this something of meaning and purpose and be connected to the godlies. And like you see, all kinds of people get inspired by causes that are good and godly, and even in the world, and they become their passion in life, and you can have that. Okay, even higher than this, This is the inner desire, the simple desire that's higher than any reason, and this you don't really have so much in the nefesh tivis. That's why he doesn't talk about it so much. It's just an essential, simple desire. It's not based on any logic. Which is the source of what causes this. And so he just adds it in here because you can have from this fourth level, this fifth level of the nefesh tivis, you can have, again, this can only be activated once the nefesh kiss starts to shine in. You can also then have in the nefesh tivis activated this fifth level, this higher level where it's coming from like the yichida, the rutzin, the simple rutz that's higher than a reason. But generally, the mesiras nefesh of the nefesh tivis is always a mesiras nefesh that's based on a cheshbon, and therefore it's somewhat of a limited mesiras nefesh, like it talks about elsewhere in Chassidus. Benimsa muvan and muvur mikala, now, when it comes out based on what we explained, it's understood from what we said. Bechelek v'sug zeh haklali, with this whole general category of inspiration that's coming from the nefesh tivis. Shehu HaHispaalus v'mayich v'leiv hanais v'neilan ha'idei hachana davka. This is an inspiration in the mind and the heart, but it's coming and being created through a preparation, davka, a person has to do something to create it because it's not natural for the nefesh hativus to have these, to be inspired and motivated by godliness. So a person has to put an effort to explain to themselves and get them to appreciate it and want to do it. Davka betchila, so the person first has to do this hachana, this preparation to get themselves become a keli for it. Shehu hasbaidinos, and the preparation they have to do is the hasbaidinos. They have to learn about it and think about it and understand it, and eat basically depending on the quality of their understanding. The more deeply and that they understand, the more that it's real and relevant and personal, the more they'll climb this ladder of these levels of inspiration. Until they reach the fifth level, Shua Kavana, Atzma, where they're able to really appreciate the cause itself and be committed and passionate about the cause itself that's higher than themselves and really have that transcendence. Sheba Chachma Ubina, which is coming from the actual Chachma Bina, Hameir Belev Gamkin, and once again, this fifth level also shines into the heart. And it's also felt in the heart, but it's deeper and higher than just the love and fear that's in the heart. Canal. Vihine, now he's going to adjust our levels a little bit. Vihine, Hamadrega Ha'alef, that first level, Hanal, that we mentioned, Masha Enich Chafetz Rak Spilus, Bilti Hizbainus Belakusklal. He just wants the inspiration. He doesn't really want to do the Hizbainus to understand godliness. He'll just do it if that's going to get the feeling. Zeh Karav Le'esh Zara Hanal, like we said before, this is very close, and this is similar to that foreign fire. She'ena Be'esh Hashem, where God is not in the fire, which is, in other words, this is like the klipas noiga type of thing where it's taking something, it's self-serving, but it's using it for good, and it's very close to the level where it's completely self-serving, where God is not there at all, which it would be like the shalosh klipas tameas, where it becomes actual distraction that's taking away. There's a level of shalei lishma, which is not a positive thing. So this is that in-between stage where it's a shalei lishma that can lead to lishma, and the inside of it is lishma, so therefore it's okay. But it's really, in general, in that category of shalei lishma. The light nechsha miklal hey madregas, it's not really one of the five levels. It's really just a gateway or an intermediary between the doing something that's completely self-serving, that's against Hashem, towards moving towards wanting to serve Hashem. So in the beginning, like Avram Avinu would invite the guests, and he would make it nice for them physically, and they'd want to come for the food, right? And from there, then he would teach them. And that's, so there's this idea of using sometimes these things, like Klipas Noiga, as a gateway to bring a person in. So the fact that a person is going to find it personally enjoyable, like there was a story with Rebbe Rashab where somebody was giving a shiur in Chassidus, and he reported to Rebbe Rashab about it, and he would serve some sort of punch. And the Rebbe Rashab felt that it wasn't appropriate. People should come. They should want to learn the Chassidus itself. And you find this type of thing sometimes where the Rebbeim put down this idea, like a person sitting with a L'Kutei Torah, the Friedrich Rebbe says, and a cup of coffee, and he gives a shmak, and you don't know if he's talking about the coffee or about the mimer. So there is this thing where it can be a distraction, get in the way. And so because of that, he said, okay, so he'll stop serving it at the shiur. And then next time he came back to report, the Rabbi Shab asked him about the shiur, and he said, the truth is, since we stopped serving the punch, a lot of the people stopped coming. And so the Rabbi Shab said, well, if that's the case, if that's going to get them to come, then you should serve it. So this is the idea that even if something is not really, if it's really like Shalai Lishma, but at the end of the day, if that's what's getting people to do it, so good, then we do it, as long as it's not actually taking away and becoming negative. So this is not considered one of the five levels. Because the five levels correspond to the five levels of the soul, which are Nefesh Neshama Chayechida. Ubechinas Nefesh, Bechinas Asiya, He Bechinas Haheskim Lemais Levad, Sheba Bechinas Hayda, Ubechinas Machshava Stama now, Shnekar Bechinas Nefesh Levad. And the first level of the soul is level of Nefesh, which is where a person is motivated to action. And that's this Heskem Lemaisa, this commitment, at least a commitment to do the right action, which comes at least with the Hayda, with a sense of at least belief that they believe it's true, and this machshava stam, like we said, this simple thought, that's called the love of nefesh. Ubechinas ruach, the love of ruach, sheish bechayis gadol yeser, hu bechinas espais machshava taiva hanal. The love of ruach is where a person has the good thought, which is with more inspiration. Umaisha kosov, like it says in the pasuk, v'taichin ruchais, that God sees the what's in every person's spirit. Shehu b'chinas hashmiya taiva b'machshava hanal, which is the good thought that a person understands it, whether he feels personally relevant. U'kumaysha kosav, like it says, achein ruach hu be'enaish, that there is a spirit in man, hulu. So this is the level of ruach. B'chinas neshama, hu b'chinas ha'aras, ha'meichin, d'chach b'mina b'leiv. Kishemispal halev ba'ar b'chayis pimi yeser kanal. And the level of neshama is where the understanding of the chacham bina shines in the heart, and so the heart is able to be inspired with a deeper, more personal sense of personal relevance of the idea. Ba'al zanemer, and about this it says in the pasuk nishmas shakai tavinam, that God understands the souls, and this comes from bina liba davka. It comes specifically from understanding. When a person really understands through experience with the real understanding, then it comes into the heart, like it says bina liba. But tuchen libais, that God searches the hearts to see what's in a person's heart. That's where a person's serving God and turning on the chacham bina themselves, and they're actually motivated to understand kamay shehem as they are. Beli hispashas adayin behispaalus alev, before the chacham bina spread into the heart. Shemechmasam kanal shenikra kavana, and this is what's called the kavana. A person appreciates the inner intention of the godliness itself. That's the real fifth level. Which is this essential desire, minatam, the seichel agami, which is really higher than any reason or any intellect. There's real no reasons for the ratzon kidua, maybe, and this is enough to understand. And I think the reason that he first explains the 5 levels one way and then switches it at the end is because when a person starts their avodah, their sense of self is their body and their nefesh bahamis, and the essence of that is just the physical things, and so they can't appreciate godliness in a way that's intrinsic. But after going through this process of refinement of iskafia, a person can then have the godly soul nefesh kiss shine in, and that can reveal the yichida, that really the godly spark that's hidden even in the nefesh tivis, even in the body itself and the nefesh bahamis, and they can become transformed and reveal this deeper yichida, which was not there before. So I think that's perhaps why, but it's only a suggestion. Okay, that's the end of Perek Beis.